Region 2 stakeholders. My name is Dr. Connie D. Stevenson, Director of School Choice and Student Assignment for the DeKalb County School District. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to the Comprehensive Master Plan Town Hall meeting. We are happy that you've joined us this evening for this very important event. Tonight, as we discuss the Comprehensive Master Plan and field questions, we hope you will be provided with greater clarity and a renewed sense of partnership with the district. At this time, Superintendent Cheryl WatsonHarris will bring you greetings.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stevenson. Thank you to our leadership team that's in attendance this evening. And most of all, thank you to our stakeholders for joining us this evening. Again, I'm Cheryl WatsonHarris, the very proud superintendent of DeKalb County School District. And I thank you for being in community to discuss this very important topic, the Comprehensive Master Plan, or the CMP, and SPLOS 5. We know that there are lots of questions about the status of our SPLOS 5 projects, and we thought that it was important to look back in terms of the work that was outlined as part of SPLOS 5 as we continue to look forward with our Comprehensive Master Plan. This evening, we aim to provide updates on exactly where we are in the process. We all know that we had a temporary pause on the CMP to kind of get ourselves in the best shape to move forward in a strong and strategic way. And so we want to make sure that we share exactly where we are in the process and to bring greater clarity to questions and concerns regarding SPLOS 5. We also continue to receive inquiries on where we are with SPLOS 5. And to hear directly from you, this is our fourth town hall in this series, and we've received incredibly important feedback from our community stakeholder group, whether it be actually in this session or after the session. So please know that all of your questions are very important to us. We will do our best to answer all of the questions that you have in this setting, but definitely commit to continuing to post the answers to the questions by Friday of each week. That is our commitment. By Friday of each week, we will post the answers to the questions from the town hall that have not been answered during the meeting. We also hope that you will recognize improvements in real time in terms of the information that's posted on our CMP page that is readily available. So some things that have been noted are things that will require additional work, and we are committed to doing so. But the ones that information is readily available, we're making sure that we're updating the website in real time. A few from the previous town halls, we've had stakeholders ask us about our vision and the intention behind the CMP. And for us, it's to make sure that we ensure that scholars not only have access to a variety of academic options, things that align with the hopes and dreams for their families, having a robust portfolio of school options, but also that they're all educated in facilities that allow them to thrive. And that's from everything from the condition of the facilities to the overcrowding or the underutilization of our buildings. So that is why we're embarking on this very exciting course. We are ready to move forward. This isn't a false start. We're ready to move forward, and that's why we wanted to have these town halls to hear from our community about what is top of mind as we're continuing to move forward. The fruits of these meetings, again, will help chart a productive, efficient course for the district for years to come. And so that is why we're so invested in getting this CMP right, because we know that this comprehensive master plan will serve as a roadmap for our district for the foreseeable future. So again, I want to thank you. I want to thank all of the members of Region 2 and some members who have joined us for every town hall thus far. We appreciate your partnership. We appreciate the level of accountability that you're putting on us, because we want to deliver, we want to exceed expectations, and that's going to take time. So we also appreciate the grace and understanding of where we are as a district, but most importantly, our shared and collective vision of where we want to go. So with that, I'm going to turn it over now to our Region 2 Superintendent, Regional Superintendent, Mr. Trent Arnold.
Thank you, Ms. Watson-Harris. And my name is Trent Arnold. I'm the Regional Superintendent for Region 2. I work for the schools in the Druid Hills, Lakeside, and Tucker cluster, and it's my honor to be with you tonight. I look forward to hearing from each of you and engaging with you tonight so that we can better serve you, your children, and your schools in Region 2 and across the district. Thank you very much for joining us, and I look forward to tonight's meeting.
Next, we will have a presentation led by Mr. Richard Boyd, Interim Chief Operating Officer, and Mr. Hans Williams, Director of Planning and East BOST Program.
Thank you, Dr. Stevenson. Again, I want to welcome you to the district's comprehensive master plan regional town hall for Region 2. Tonight, we're going to focus on the East BOST 5 and facility improvements. There'll also be an update on the CMP, but there won't be any options that are presented tonight. We're having the same presentation, as you can see, on the 7 different nights here for each region. The only difference is when we speak to a particular region, we'll focus and highlight that region's projects. So the other meetings, if you would like to join us, next, let's see, Thursday, Region 7 on the 26th. Region 6 will be on Monday the 30th, and then Region 1 will be on Tuesday the 31st. Next slide. Our agenda tonight, we will go over the East BOST and facility improvements. We'll have an East BOST overview and then discuss the current projects in Region 2. We'll also discuss the CMP update, providing a status update and a timeline to completion, and then we'll spend the bulk of the time on your questions and providing answers to you. Now I'll turn it over to Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Richard. And just to reiterate what Richard was saying about tonight is focused on facility improvements, particularly our East BOST program. We will be discussing the CMP. As you can see, there's a CMP update, but the big meeting for the CMP will be when we present options, and that will happen at the September Town Hall. And I'll tell you a bit more about that when we get there. So let's focus a bit more, as we said, on East BOST and facility improvements. So first, a bit of an East BOST overview. It's important to understand what this program is and why it's important and why we're talking about it as part of the Comprehensive Master Plan Town Hall. So as we're looking at East BOST and facility improvements, it's important to have an understanding of what East BOST is and how it relates to facility improvements for all of our schools. East BOST stands for Education Special Purpose Local Option Sales Tax. That is a 1 penny sales tax on all goods and services sold in DeKalb County. The revenue from this sales tax is used by the school district to fund capital projects and purchases. For DeKalb, that means new facilities, classroom additions, major and minor renovations at nearly every school, as well as purchasing new technology and equipment. This penny sales tax generates about $500 million over 5 years. And while this seems like quite a lot, the estimated cost to address all of the facility needs across the district is well over $2 billion. What this means is that East BOST program is and will continue to be a necessary funding source for facility improvements in this district. The East BOST sales tax is approved by voters every 5 years, and so operates on a 5-year funding cycle. We are currently near the end of the 5th such cycle, East BOST 5, which began in July of 2017 and ends in July of 2022, or I should say ends at the end of June. This coming November, DeKalb County voters will vote on renewing East BOST for the next funding cycle, which will be East BOST 6. Over the nearly 25 years East BOST has been in place, it has paid for 36 new or replacement schools, 31 building additions or school conversions, over 80 elementary school gym additions, and major and minor renovations and improvements to every single school or building in this district. To show the extent of the impact of East BOST, we've listed some of the major improvements that East BOST has paid for in each region from East BOST 1 to now. I'm going to skip over much of these in the interest of time, focusing primarily on Region 2 for tonight. However, I encourage anyone interested to go to the CMP webpage and download this presentation or attend the other CMP regional town hall meetings we are having this week and next. The content of each presentation will be the same, as Richard said, but I will be highlighting the major projects in a different region for each night. And so tonight we'll be focusing on Region 2. So let's skip ahead. So as you can see, East BOST 1 paid for 21 new elementary school gymnasiums. East BOST 2 built the new Tucker Middle School and an addition at Briar Lake Elementary. East BOST 3, we saw the Druid Hills High School addition, Lakeside High School addition, and a new Tucker High School. East BOST 4, we've seen an addition at Coralwood Diagnostic, Henderson Middle School addition, a new Fernbank Elementary School, a new Pleasantdale Elementary School, and a new Smoke Rise Elementary School, which just opened. Keep in mind that this is not a full listing. Only some of the major projects, such as new schools and additions, are listed here. As I said before, every school in this district has been improved as part of the East BOST program. So now let's skip ahead to current projects. What are we working on right now? While we're coming to the end of the sales tax collection for East BOST 5, we are very much still in the middle of construction. So I'm going to skip ahead once again to Region 2. And as I said before, if you're interested in the other regions, all the slides I'm skipping past, I encourage you to go to the CMP webpage and download this presentation or attend the other CMP regional town hall meetings we are having over the next week, or both. So here in Region 2, you can see accessibility improvements and fire sprinklers for Midvale Elementary, HVAC and window replacement for Laurel Ridge Elementary, HVAC replacement at Livesey Elementary, and HVAC also for Hawthorne Elementary with plumbing improvements, roof replacements at Hawthorne and Brockett Elementaries, Brockett and Oak Grove Elementaries. Henderson Mill will be getting a roof replacement, plumbing, HVAC components, Briar Vista, roof replacement, security vestibule, accessibility improvements, Druid Hills High School, security vestibule, fire sprinkler and accessibility improvements, Druid Hills Middle School, security vestibule, plumbing fixture replacement and accessibility improvements, security vestibules for Briar Lake Elementary, Henderson Middle School, Idlewood Elementary, and Oak Grove Elementary, sprinkler installation at Brockett Elementary, Evansdale Elementary, turf and track installation at Lakeside High School, Druid Hills High School, Druid Hills Middle School, Tucker High School, and we seem to have Druid Hills High School listed twice. That's the baseball facility improvements, forgive me. So you can see every high school is receiving turf and track installation as part of BOST 5, and you'll see those coming up here in a moment. So as you can see, a few of these projects are already completed and we're well on their way, and we are working to complete the remainder over the next 2 years. And speaking of completed projects, I'm going to jump ahead once again to take a look at what has already come out of East BOST 5. So skipping past regions 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, we can see here that in East BOST 5, we've already completed 3 new elementary schools, John Lewis Elementary, Doraville United Elementary, and a replacement Indian Creek Elementary. It's worth noting that the just opened Smoke Rise Elementary was actually one of the last major constructions under East BOST 4. We have replaced 19 elementary school playgrounds and have so far completed turf and track replacements at 6 of our high schools, with the rest being completed in the coming months. We have completed plumbing fixture replacements at Bowie Theme School and Oakview Elementary, and have completed perimeter fencing projects at the 24 schools in groups A and B, and there are 12 more schools in perimeter fencing group C that we're currently working with. Just to give you a look at what these projects look like, you can see here the beautiful tracks and fields that we have installed at Cedar Grove and Redan High Schools, Southwest DeKalb and Arabia Mountain High Schools. I love these pictures. They look beautiful. They don't, Arabia Mountain especially, always looks like a computer render to me rather than that's the real track. This is the prototype, the same prototype design for which the new John Lewis and Doraville United Elementary were built as. And this beautiful new facility, Indian Creek and John Lewis, you can see this design, the beautiful foyer. I love going into these new schools. And for Region 2, this is the same design for Fernbank, Pleasantdale, and Smoke Rise. And finally, you can see the new touchless plumbing features installed at Oakview Elementary and Bowie Theme. While these may not look as pretty as the previous improvements, I can assure you that these new fixtures are having a real positive impact on these schools. These projects are just the beginning of what we are already working on. As you saw earlier, we are still working on dozens of projects that will improve schools across the district. Some are nearing completion, some are still in construction, and some are still being designed. But we expect to have most or all of these projects complete in the next 2 to 3 years. So now that we've talked about what we did in the past and what we're doing now, let's take a moment to focus on what we're doing next. Hopefully by now, everyone is familiar with the CMP, or Comprehensive Master Plan. This plan will help guide the future of the district's facility improvements, including making recommendations on what will be included in the next round of East BOST funded facility improvements. So that's a big part of why we're talking about it today. It's not the only part of the CMP, but it is a big part of the CMP. At the moment, the CMP team is working on putting together options and recommendations that will be presented next month at another round of regional town hall meetings. Many of you may remember that we have been working on the CMP since the end of last year and had originally hoped to have options ready by the time school let out this past school year. Unfortunately, this timeline slipped into the summer, and with preparation for school start and leadership change in operations, the CMP was more or less on hold until earlier this month, as the superintendent talked about. While we have lost some time, the next round of town hall meetings will put us back on track for completing the CMP, as they will give you the chance to give us your invaluable feedback on the direction of the CMP, which the CMP is going to use in drafting the comprehensive master plan. So to give you a more complete timeline of what that looks like, you can see in green the August and September regional town hall meetings. In gray, you can see the development of CMP options for facilities, special programs, redistricting, and prioritization of facility improvements. These are happening right now in preparation for the regional town halls next month. In blue, you can see the final components of the CMP, the implementation plan, financial analysis, draft project list for East BOST 6, and the final draft of the comprehensive master plan. The CMP team is working hard to make up for lost time and complete the CMP this fall as originally planned. So with that, I'm sure there are several questions or comments that our community has, and I'd like to spend the rest of our time in this hour addressing them.
Yes, at this time, we would like to hear from you. We will now address questions. If you have a question, we ask that you type your question in the chat. We will attempt to answer as many questions as we can tonight. If we do not get to your question, please know that your question will be answered and the responses will be posted on the CMP website. So let's get started with those questions. The first question is pretty lengthy. However, I feel the need to read all of it in order to make sure that the context is given. Millions of dollars were allocated in SPLOST 5 to relieve overcrowding at area high schools, Clarkston, Dunwoody, Chamblee, Lakeside, and Cross Keys, through additions and/or new schools. None of those additions and new buildings materialized, and the millions of dollars allocated for classrooms that would have eliminated the need for portables seems to have instead been spent on turf, athletic fields, and lighting. What was the rationale for this decision? That's the first part of the question. The second part, how can stakeholders trust that our future SPLOST votes will result in quick actions to build classrooms and serve students' educational needs instead of luxuries? Educational needs, classrooms instead of luxuries, turf fields, and lighting.
So the first part of the question is the rationale for the deferment of all the major East BOST 5 major construction addition of capacity projects. One of the things that happened with East BOST 5 in the planning phases of it, as we were establishing budgets for the new for these projects, was the estimation how much it would cost for these projects was, to be perfectly honest, it was not done as it should have been. Those estimations, and therefore the budgets that came out of them, were not enough. They were not done correctly. And so what ended up happening was, and many of our stakeholders remember in 2019, we dealt with this. East BOST 5 went through a bit of a crisis where there was an understanding that we would not be able to pay for all of the projects that had been put up on the project list. And so what came out of that, all the discussions with the community and what the board finally decided in February of 2020 was to take the major projects, the additions, all the capacity addition projects, and defer them to after the CMP. February of 2020 was also the meeting where the CMP was first introduced and passed by the board, or excuse me, the CMP wasn't. The idea of it was introduced by the superintendent at the time, and it went hand in hand with the major revamp of East BOST 5, deferring those major projects. And so with that, it was understood that the CMP, and therefore the project list for East BOST 6 that comes out of the CMP, a priority of that would be the capacity issues that East BOST 5 was trying to address to begin with. One of the major reasons why all of the capacity additions in East BOST 5 were deferred was because the need for as much capacity as was planned for did not pan out as things went along. There wasn't as much of a need for giant schools and giant additions everywhere. And so part of that deferment was, let's come back, take another look at the district comprehensively, not just at particular areas, make sure that we bring in an outside firm to do our forecasting, which we've done as part of the CMP, and make sure that whatever recommendations go into East BOST 6, into this new big project list, look at the district comprehensively as part of a comprehensive master plan for the entire district. So that was the rationale behind deferring them. And I think that goes into the trust as well, that it's baked into the DNA of the comprehensive master plan, that addressing the capacity concerns in the district is why the CMP is happening, and is a primary need and a primary driver of what will become the East BOST 6 project list.
Thank you so much for that response. The next question is, how are these anticipated SPLOST 5 projects factored into FCA and ESA for the CMP?
The anticipated projects are, for the most part, not factored in. The assessments are done essentially as a snapshot. The assessors go out, take a look at what's there, and say, this is what we're currently seeing. The idea is that what is expected to happen with East BOST 5 over the next 2 to 3 years as we're finishing up our projects will be taken into account as we're building the future project lists, as we're doing the prioritization of facility improvement needs. So for example, the need for sprinklers at Druid Hills High School has not yet happened. It would not be reflected in any of the assessments, but it would be, because it is a paid, already funded, planned for project in East BOST 5, you won't see sprinklers for Druid Hills High School on the SPLOST 6 project list or any other facility improvement prioritization list. It's already funded.
Thank you. For Laurel Ridge, the projects you listed were already on the books. Our reports showed substantive needs. Are you adding more things on that list?
Yes, we are looking at every facility and the needs of every facility, particularly looking at major building systems like roof, HVAC, plumbing, that sort of thing. I think roof and HVAC have really been our primary. We want to make sure that as many, or if all, of our schools have the roof and HVAC that they need. But now that there's no as many, we want to make sure all of our schools have the roof and HVAC that they need. So, but we are looking at the needs, every need at every facility, so that as we develop a prioritization of needs, we can include all of those needs. And so that way, any future funding source, whether it be East BOST, whether it be CARES funds, or any future funding source that can go towards facility improvements, we walk down that list and say, here is the next thing on the list that matches what this funding source is for.
Thank you so much. The table only said turf for Tucker, but the track does need replacement. Will that be replaced as well?
Yes, and that's actually something that we need to make sure, and I was talking about that with some of my colleagues today, to make sure that all of our documentation is consistent. The addition of tracks was after the initial East BOST 5 project list. And so because of that, the language hasn't yet made it into the specific, just every specific description that it needs to make sure that it's clearly communicated. All of our high schools are getting new artificial turf and new tracks.
Okay. I understand the efficiencies of having a single elementary school plan that is repeated across the district. I also understand that that efficiencies of scale may make larger schools more cost-effective to operate. However, the current 950-seat elementary school template is very unpopular in many communities. Is DCSD open? Hold on, I'm sorry, let me scroll down a little bit more. Is DCSD open to P+W's recommendation of having smaller elementary school options, 600 and 800 seats? That's the first question. Also, what does DCSD have demonstrating that larger schools are in fact cheaper to operate? General education. Okay, can you answer those two questions? I'm sorry.
Sure. So the first one is an easy yes. We are absolutely open to different school sizes. There are efficiencies and economies of scales that come with larger schools that allow us to do a lot more. Especially it depends, of course, on every school and every situation. And that's why we're open to different sizes. While the East BOST 4 and 5 have built essentially the same elementary school prototype, we recognize that we're not trying to make a one size fits all for every single thing. And it's worth exploring different sizes for different areas. Now, that being said, as I said, there are efficiencies that come with using a similar design or a modular design. For example, Indian Creek Elementary that was just open, while it's still based on the prototype, it's a variation on that prototype, as it isn't exactly the same. In this particular case with Indian Creek, it's because the school was built to be larger, a 1,200 seat school, rather than the 9 or 950 of all of our other schools. But the same principle applies, that you could have a design that is modular enough to fit what is needed for that area, for that community.
Mr. Williams, if you don't mind me just jumping in there, and I'd like to connect this question with one that just came up in terms of us being open to K-8 schools. I want to say as a superintendent that we are authentic in our commitment to using the CMP to hear what our larger community wants to see in our school district. We want to make sure that the options that we're providing match the desire for schools within our district. So the previous question said, are we open to the recommendation from Perkins and Will? We met with Perkins and Will earlier today. They're offering us recommendations based on the community input, as well as what they believe is cost efficient and meets the outcomes that we envision, that I spoke about at the top of the meeting, in terms of decreasing overutilization or overcrowding, addressing underutilization of buildings, and also making sure that our families have a robust option of schools. So we are completely open to all of the ideas, the K-8s, as well as having some smaller schools, mid-sized schools, large schools. But that's what will come next at the next set of town halls, for us to come back to the community to share the recommendations from Perkins and Will that were developed in the community meetings. So there's no hard stance in terms, there's no predetermined plan. That is why we are embarking on this CMP and why we held the community input sessions. I hope that helps.
Okay, next question. Is Lakeside Track and Turf still happening? I heard it was delayed or canceled.
Yes, it is absolutely happening. I'm going to let Richard Boyd speak to that.
Yeah, we are going to proceed with that project. There was a slight delay while we worked with the school and the contractor to just coordinate how students would move between the main building and the portables and move around in that area. So that is still something, still a project that is on our list to be done.
Okay, thank you so much. What about Idlewood Elementary?
Ask the next question. I'm going to come back to Idlewood in just a moment.
Okay. Were any improvements made to district-owned facilities that house charter schools using SPLOST 1 through 5?
No, charter schools, the 4 charter schools that are in DCSD owned facilities are not included in eSPLOST projects. So at least not while they are charter schools. I can say that previous eSPLOSTs have paid for improvements for schools that were DCSD at the time. They were later closed and the charter school moved in. But while the school is a charter eSPLOST, there are no eSPLOST projects that affect the charter school, those schools.
Are you ready to go back to Idlewood, or would you like me to keep going?
So in eSPLOST 5, Idlewood is, there we go, is getting a security vestibule. And so that project, and fenced installation. So that project is, I'm not sure on the fenced installation, if it hasn't already happening, it will be happening soon. And with the security vestibule, I'd have to look at the specific schedule, but I would be willing to bet that that is in design or soon to be. Richard, do you know the specific, where that specific phase of that school?
Yes, sorry, I was having mute issues. Yes, it's in, that group is in design right now.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. As a follow-up to questions from the last town hall, can you please clarify the steps that have been taken to utilize CARES funds to address immediate needs that have been identified, example, LRES windows and HVAC?
So the Laurel Ridge Elementary windows is already paid for out of eSPLOST 5, and that project, I believe, Richard, I think you can give an update on that.
Yes.
As far as HVAC, I'll say with CARES Act funds, we're using that in a couple of different ways. One is to bolster our ongoing maintenance, and actually Richard would probably speak to this even better than I can. But I can also say that we are looking at CARES Act funds for full HVAC replacements to continue the work that we've begun in eSPLOST 5, hope to continue in eSPLOST 6, but even before then, use the CARES Act funds now to look at schools that need full HVAC replacement. And again, that goes back to the facility condition prioritization that we're working on as part of the CMP. At the moment, it's more of a parallel process. We're not waiting for the CMP to begin planning out which areas, which schools can we begin working on for begin ramping up for full HVAC replacement as part of the CARES Act. Richard, can you talk to the rest of CARES Act?
I'm sorry, I was about to respond to the Laurel Ridge. I thought that's
that one first, and then what are we doing with CARES Act funds for maintenance and repair?
Right. So Laurel Ridge is, there is a project there for window replacement. That project has started. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get near as much done over the summer that we wanted to. We did replace glazing in 2 classrooms in the media center, and we are scheduled to do the remainder of that throughout the year, or throughout this part of the school year, this first semester. As far as the other parts of the CARES Act items that we are looking at, are some new, don't have those notes right in front of me, Hans, the ones that we had just discussed. There were 3 or 4 schools that we talked about for new roofing, 3 or 4 schools that we also talked about for new HVAC. There are some other initiatives that we are looking into as well that I can't discuss yet until we've discussed those more internally, but there are a number of improvements that we are looking at for the portion that facilities will get with the CARES Act money.
Mm-hmm. And just to clarify what Richard was saying, those 3 or 4 schools that we're looking at for roofs and HVAC are the ones that we can start as soon as possible to make sure that we're not waiting on the CMP. But I anticipate that there'll be many more than that once we can get this first batch started, and especially once the prioritization as part of the CMP comes through here in the next couple of months, and we can make sure that the rest of what we're spending with CARES Act goes in parallel and in line with the CMP, and then also can inform what will and will not need to be on the East BOST 6 project list, because we don't anticipate, given the huge amount of needs that the district has for facility improvements and how much of that is tied up into the major building components of HVAC and roofs, we don't anticipate that CARES Act funds will be able to pay for all of that by any means. So we're trying to get as much as we can done through CARES Act as quickly, starting with a few of them now, and then moving forward with the rest of them as we can. And then anything that we can't, seeing what we can put into East BOST 6.
Okay, thank you. A school like Laurel Ridge, the Windows project started right before the start of school, and HVAC is slated for 2022. Why were not such projects prioritized to ensure that our children return to school in a safer environment? The DOE website, CDC, MMWR, among others, have discussed the importance of portable air filtration units. Have there been any steps to provide these units to protect our children who have yet to be vaccinated?
Richard, do you want to go ahead and talk about the?
No, we have not provided those type units yet. What we have, what we are doing is providing as much up to 50% of air circulation. So we're maximizing the air circulation, and also adding MERV 13 filters where the units will accommodate that, adding up to MERV 11 filters for those units that can accommodate the MERV 13. There are other strategies that we're looking at as well, but no, we haven't added units yet.
Mm-hmm. And to speak to the timing part of the question, one of the unfortunate effects of the issues that I talked about before with East BOST 5, major program adjustment that had to happen, that was passed by the board in February of 2020, just before COVID hit. And so during the whole year leading up to it, East BOST, the original schedule for East BOST 5 programs was already structured in such a way that the major projects, the big construction would mostly be happening on the front end, with the quote unquote smaller but still major renovations such as HVAC happening towards the end. With all of the issues happening with questions about funding and the need for to adjust the overall program, the whole program was slightly delayed as focus shifted on that going into February 2020. That was when Laurel Ridge, the HVAC system at Laurel Ridge was actually added, was in February. And then immediately after COVID hit. And so things unfortunately were slowed down or even delayed a little bit there as well. And so what that means is this year, we are really pushing to try and get as much done as possible now, and especially over the next couple of years. That's why we have so many projects that are currently in design, so that we can begin construction. You'll see a lot of construction this next summer. We have a lot of schools that are going to be getting sprinklers, going to be getting HVAC and new roofs, and then the summer afterwards as well, recognizing that there's only so much that we can do over the 2 months of summer. So Laurel Ridge is one of those where the project was added for the first time as a new project in February 2020. And unfortunately, construction didn't begin right away, or I should say, design for that didn't begin right away because COVID hit immediately after. And so that project was, as well as all of the other projects, ended up being pushed back to now. So with that project being in design, construction should begin in next summer. And I don't know when the end date. Some HVAC projects are complicated because especially with the complete replacement of HVAC, as we're trying to do as much as possible now, it means there's major changes. We have to go in, rip out ceilings. The same thing if we were putting in sprinklers. It's a major impact to the school. And so quite often it's not possible to complete all of that work in the 2 months of summer. So we have to either make arrangements to move the students within the school or complete it over a series of summers. Richard, do you know the exact schedule of Laurel Ridge? I know it's scheduled, it's in design, construction will begin this next summer. Do you know if it'll complete in the summer or if it'll go into summer of 2023? And we can come back if you need a second to look that up. You're on mute.
My apologies. That will be complete the summer of 2023.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's the case for many of our HVAC projects.
Okay, Hans, this question is pretty closely related to the last question. Will there be COVID mitigation strategies incorporated into the new HVAC system at Laurel Ridge and actually throughout for all of the schools?
Absolutely. That is a big lesson learned from COVID, is the need for infectious disease mitigation strategies. And yes, that absolutely applies to COVID. And so, yes, that's being built into all of the designs that we're working on for HVAC and all of the future projects. You know, Richard alluded to things he couldn't quite talk about. That's a big part of it, is how do we make sure that we do everything we can for all of our future projects, so that we know what is needed at these schools and what is the best use of this technology for putting in a new HVAC system, best use of that opportunity to address infectious disease concerns.
How do we get working HVAC prioritized as a necessary investment? Druid Hills High School has been having issues with its HVAC since at least 2013. How do we get this prioritized? It is impacting the educational environment and health of kids in Title I schools.
I would say at this point, it is prioritized. It was not before as much. That's absolutely true. As I said, the original East BOST 5 schedule pushed a lot of these HVAC and roof projects towards the back because it wasn't as much of a priority. Now it very, very much is so. You know, it is the number one thing we look at when we look at, you know, what are the needs, what are the projects that we want to be thinking about as we're coming up. Right alongside with capacity issues in the CMP, when we're looking at facility needs, is roofs and HVAC. The challenges that we have is that it's not an instant thing. You know, we know that this is a priority. We know that this is an immediate need, but it takes time to ramp these projects up, to make sure that they have the funding that they need, to design them, begin implementation. With schools, as I said, it is very invasive to schools to go in and tear out the HVAC system and put in something new. And so, unfortunately, all of the steps could be in place by March, but we were not going to begin construction until the summer because we need the students to be out of there. You can't really learn if your ceiling is torn down around you. So all of these components go into the schedule and timing of these projects. So as much as we would like to have, you know, be beginning as many projects as possible right now, it takes a bit of time to move them through the construction pipeline.
Okay, give me just a moment. I'm trying to filter through the chat. There are a number of comments that are incorporated with the questions. Okay, what is the district's plan to invest in facilities for the arts pathway, which includes a school choice K-8, school DESA, and the high achieving magnet 9 through 12 high school DSA? This pathway has been in the strategic vision of DCSD and was on the ballot for multiple SPLOST cycles.
It is absolutely part of the CMP looking at the art school. And Madam Superintendent mentioned that we met with Perkins and Will earlier today, and that was one of the things that we talked about. The vision of an art school in the district, what that looks like, how that has changed over time, what the desires of the community are now, and what that can look like moving into the CMP.
If I could just add to that, Mr. Williams, because that definitely brings a smile to my face. Yes, that was top of mind today. And one of the things that we discussed during our meeting with Perkins and Will, we think that our art school is a real jewel in our crown. And we know from having engaged with the parent group there and one of our board members, Mrs. Pierce, has been so committed and so interested in righting the past wrongs. And we know lots of promises have been made and they have not come to reality. So we are just really excited to continue to engage with that community, to explore their hopes and dreams, and to make sure that we're able to deliver on the promises of the past and have a real solid arts offering for our scholars, both at the art school, but also to increase access to the arts at all of our schools. So thank you so much for raising that question.
Thank you. Why is Avondale Elementary School not on the project list? When it needs a new roof, the current one leaks whenever it rains, HVAC upgrades, and fire sprinkler improvements.
We have many schools that have where honestly, I look at this, especially as part of the CMP, the work that we're doing, I look at this almost every day. And there are several schools that I look at and I say, how have we not gone in and done the project here yet? Because yes, it needs a new roof. It needs a new HVAC system. You can see with FCAs that were recently done, or even just talking with our regional maintenance supervisors, there are schools that have really immediate needs and they're not on the current East BOST 5 project list. And that is a big part of what we're trying to correct and address moving forward with the CMP, that prioritization of facility improvements. Essentially what it means is those schools are going to filter up to the top, that their needs, they'll have lower scores for the major building components such as HVAC and roof. And it'll become apparent that there is a major need here that should be part of whatever funding source, whether it be CARES Act, SPLOST 6, or whatever, what have you, for that project to happen and to happen soon. So that is the case at Avondale Elementary, and it's the case at many of our schools, especially some of our older elementary schools where, you know, a lot of needs have been put off, not done, however you want to describe it. Yes, that is a problem we have seen at many of our facilities, and we need to correct them. It's not just that we want to or we'd like to. We know it is an absolute need that every child needs a roof and air conditioning and heat to learn.
Thank you so much. When will the preliminary redistricting plans be available for stakeholder review, and where can parents find these plans?
Preliminary redistricting is, some redistricting will be talked about as part of the options that are going to be presented at the town halls at the end of September. But there will be a lot of different changes and things presented as part of the options. And so there absolutely will need to be, I've talked about in the past that as part of the CMP, we're looking at redistricting in, at least I am looking at it in 3 different time periods. One is the immediate, what is needed for next year specifically. There are areas where redistricting is either really needed or has been put off for a few years. Is there any recommendations coming out of the CMP specifically for next year? And with that, there will need to be public engagement on redistricting specifically for next year. The second time period is more the medium term. That's the 2 to 5 years. With that, there won't be as many specifics with the CMP. It'll be pretty obvious what areas need to be redistricted to accommodate major changes to facilities. You know, if we're building a new school, there's a good chance there's going to be redistricting in the area, but it won't be next year. And then there's the longer term, 5 years to 10 years. Those you probably won't hear any specifics. It'll be, I like to call them blobs, or just, you know, these are the areas where if in 8 years we're going to build a new what have you, they'll just need to be redistricting in the area. Something, you know, that we won't see any specifics about that.
Mr. Williams, if you don't mind me just jumping in there, and I just want to show my appreciation for Mr. Williams. As you can see, he's thinking short term and long term, and he's definitely someone that we value on the team. I do want to say and acknowledge that just even the thought of redistricting it causes some angst for some of our stakeholder groups. So what I want you to hear more than even our plans at this time is that we have a commitment to discussing that with our stakeholder group. We know that this is something that will again cause some angst in some communities, and we want to make sure that we do it the right way, that we have a strategic and well thought out plan for how we're bringing that information to our community groups, and that, you know, at the end of the day, not everyone's going to agree with every recommendation, but that everyone will understand the why, the rationale, and the intended outcome outcomes or impacts. So I know that's a very kind of loaded issue for us in our community. We're committed to getting it right. We're committed to having the right type of stakeholder engagement so that at the end of the day, we all know why we're making the decisions that we're making, and that we can, whether we agree with them or not, that we can say we understand the course of action. So I just wanted to add that. But thank you, Mr. Williams.
And I think it's important as issues like redistricting are talked about more and more, to keep in mind that the comprehensive master plan, I mean, yes, there are many things that we say are waiting on the CMP. When the CMP recommends this, this is the direction that the district wants to go, but especially for things like redistricting, and especially when it comes to redistricting specifically for next year, from year to year, recommendations of the CMP, even once the CMP is put in front of the board and the board votes on accepting it, are not redistricting. You know, when the board votes on the CMP on accepting it, if they do, however that's handled, that doesn't mean that they approve all of the recommendations. It means that they've accepted the CMP and say, yes, this is what has been given to us. There will need to be a separate public engagement process for any redistricting for next year. And that's the case for all future years. Redistricting is done the school year prior to it taking effect. So even if the CMP comes and says, we'd like to build a new school here, there will likely need to be redistricting in the area. It may look something, you know, here are the schools that may be affected, whatever that looks like. The reality is that the year before that school opens, or the year before the redistricting would take effect, there would be a whole public engagement process for that. And so that's true with all of the recommendations coming out of the CMP. Any of the prioritization, any of the projects that are recommended would have to be separately voted on. And that's especially true for something like redistricting. So I'll say again, there'll be if there is redistricting for next year, which is not a guarantee. When I say that redistricting may need to be looked at, that's not to say that it absolutely has to happen. There may be reasons to delay, or to say, you know, let's wait another year or two in these areas to make sure that we only have to redistrict once, rather than a little bit here and a little bit there. But whatever, if there is redistricting, there will be a separate public engagement process for that redistricting specifically.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mr. Williams. I did just want to acknowledge that I know we have Madam Chair Turner with us this evening. We want to thank her for her leadership and for being in attendance with us this evening. And also Board Member Gerverts is with us. So we also want to acknowledge her and thank her for being with us this evening. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to our next question. We have, what percentage of SPLOST dollars are actually spent on building projects, new schools, additions, system replacements versus other expenses, buses, district vehicles, musical instruments, technology, management costs, etc.?
It'll take me a second to find the exact percentage. I want to say it's somewhere in the neighborhood of about 75%, but let me find that. I know we've got that somewhere on our eSPLOST website. So can you ask the next question while I look that up?
Yes, I'm trying to navigate through to get to a question that we haven't had yet. Will we have a firm SPLOST project list before the November ballot?
I'd like to address that, Mr. Williams, if you don't mind. I know you're ready, and you can certainly add in that is something that we're in discussion with the Board of Education with currently. I know that with SPLOST 5, the superintendent was given some autonomies so that he would be able to respond in real time to issues that came up. We also recognize that ambiguity has caused some mistrust in our community. So we're wanting to come before the public and the Board of Education with a defined list, but also a percentage of the monies that will be able to make real-time adjustments as needed. Our hope, again, has always been to rebuild trust and confidence and have a high level of transparency in all of our our dealings in operations, finance, and others. So our hope is to be as clear as possible in the list based on the priorities that come out of the CMP, while also recognizing that there's some real-time things that happen and we want to be able to respond to those as well. So more to come on that, but our intention is to be closer to a defined list than not, but also giving ourselves some grace and flexibility to be able to respond to real-time issues. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Mrs. Watson-Harris. Given the increased need for open air and outdoor spaces during the pandemic, will DCSD and the CMP leaders plan for covered outdoor classrooms and eating spaces? You're on mute, Hans.
I am muted, sorry about that. Before we answer that, I have an answer to the previous question. So about 73% of the budgeted money currently is going towards construction projects. That doesn't include technology and equipment. So that's about 11.5% going towards technology, about 7% towards equipment, and the rest going towards management support and program contingency. So the number I think that the stakeholder was looking for was 73%. Now that changes depending on the budget and as more program contingency goes towards construction projects, but it's in that ballpark. So can you re-ask the question, Connie? I apologize.
Yes. Given the increased need for open air and outdoor spaces during the pandemic, will DCSD and the CMP leaders plan for covered outdoor classrooms and eating spaces?
It's not something that I've seen talked about, but I think that we'll make sure that that's talked about with the CMP team. The CMP is looking, I guess, a little bit more big picture. So really the question is if there is new capacity, well, not if, there will be new capacity, there has to be as part of the CMP, will that new capacity include in its design outdoor areas, outdoor seating, that sort of thing? And I think that is a very good question. We can incorporate that into recommendations from the CMP as needed, but especially as we're working with our architects on those projects, we can incorporate it maybe into the DCSD standards. That's a good internal conversation we can have.
Okay. Well, the time is now 7 o'clock, but there is one last question that we're going to get to. And all other questions we promise will be answered and the responses will be posted on the CMP website. Last question, what data did you collect to ensure that security vestibules actually enhance student security, given that making schools look more like fortresses actually decrease student safety?
There wasn't, Richard, do you have anything specific on security vestibules?
Not for any specific study or anything. The vestibules that we're putting in is really one to restrict visitors from being able to come in and wander through the school. So they come in through the front doors, and they basically have to go into the main office first to check in. There are a number of the schools, a number of the older schools where you walk in and if you're not seen at the front, you have free access throughout the school. So what these do basically will prevent somebody from coming in and being able to wander down the hall. They have to go into the office first and check in.
And
I absolutely love and appreciate that question. There is a lot of national research that supports the double entry to a building, and we can most certainly look into that and post some of the research that has been done on that double entry to a building and how that cuts down on intruders and just creating an overall safe environment in the school. So I definitely appreciate that question and why that is a part of the prototype of our building. So we will make sure that we post some research, some national research on why that is a good idea for us. Thank you.
And two, you have asked some great questions tonight, and there are tons more that, again, we promise we will get to and post the responses on the CMP website. thank you so much for coming out to, well, not coming out, but logging on with us this evening. And at this time, Mrs. Watson-Harris will provide remarks for us.
Thank you so much. Thank you again to the amazing team for fielding the questions in real time. Thank you for the promise of follow-up. Thank you to all of our communities that came out. I neglected to notice that also Board Member Pierce is with us. This is her third town hall, and we appreciate her feedback and support as well. To all of our families, our commitment is to transparency and authenticity. We want to get this right. We have an amazing school district, and we can be even better. Our goal is to make sure that every school is a great school and that the people who are in that community can look to their school and say, there's a choice for me here. And we can only do that by making sure that we engage with you, that we get your feedback, and that we continue to work with Perkins and Will and AECOM to get those building assessments up so we know exactly our current state and where we want to go. And we can only do that with you. We know that this pandemic has taught us many things, but most importantly, that we're better together. And we thank you very, very much for taking away from your family time to be in community with us this evening. And we look forward to responding to your questions that have not been answered tonight, as well as re-engaging late September, early October with the actual recommendations where we can really dig in deep and make sure that we are creating the DeKalb County School District that we all imagine and want for our children. So I thank you so much, and I hope that everyone has a safe and enjoyable evening. Thank you.